They said money could buy everything, but the lonely woman sitting in the corner of that luxury restaurant proved otherwise. Because despite her flawless silk dress, her expensive jewelry glistening under the warm chandelier lights, and the aura of wealth that surrounded her, she looked like a prisoner trapped inside invisible walls. Unable to reach anyone, unable to say what she wanted to say. And the reason was painfully simple. She was a Japanese millionaire who had inherited her late father's empire and had flown to this new country to explore life beyond numbers. But she spoke almost no English, so every time she tried to order food, ask for directions, or even smile politely at strangers, she was met with confusion, awkward silence, or forced politeness, until slowly the invisible barrier of language grew into a cage of isolation that no wealth could break. And as the camera of our story zooms in, viewers are asked directly, have you ever had everything in the world, but still felt like no one could hear you? Because that is exactly how Hana Takamura felt when she placed her delicate hand on the menu that night, struggling to mouth the words of dishes she couldn't pronounce, while waiters exchanged helpless looks and whispered behind her back, some even giggling under their breath, assuming she was too proud or too odd to even try. But then came a moment, almost like fate had scripted it, when a young waitress named Emily stepped forward, not out of duty, but because she had noticed the frustration in Hana's eyes that no amount of diamonds could hide. And with a nervous but hopeful tone, she whispered in fluent Japanese, "Sumai Mason. Onaji Kataba Hana Somasu." Excuse me, I can speak the same language, and in that single instant, Hana's eyes widened, her posture shifted. And for the first time in months, she felt like she was no longer invisible, like someone had finally unlocked the door of her cage. And as their conversation flowed, awkward at first, but slowly turning into laughter, shared stories, and quiet tears, the entire restaurant turned silent, realizing that wealth means nothing if it doesn't come with understanding. But this was only the beginning of their journey. Because Emily, the waitress who came from a struggling family, working double shifts to support her younger brother's education, never imagined that her ability to speak Japanese, a skill she had learned in school out of sheer fascination, would connect her to a woman who had flown across oceans only to find herself stranded in silence. And Hana, touched by Emily's warmth, started visiting the restaurant regularly, always requesting to be seated in Emily's section. Not because of the food, but because of the company, and slowly, through countless conversations over steaming bowls of ramen, green tea, and even awkwardly translated jokes, a friendship blossomed that transcended social class. And yet, with friendship came challenges, because the world around them did not understand. And soon whispers began. Other staff accused Emily of trying to manipulate a rich woman for money. Some customers rolled their eyes, assuming Hana was eccentric and naive. And even Emily's own manager warned her to keep things professional or risk losing her job. But what they didn't see was that beneath the surface, Hana had been drowning for years, suffocated by corporate sharks, fake friends, and a family that wanted her inheritance more than her happiness. And Emily, despite her ordinary background, was the only person who treated her not as a walking bank account, but as a human being who deserved to laugh, to cry, and to be understood. As weeks turned into months, Hana's world began to shift. She started leaving behind the guarded boardrooms, and instead spent afternoons with Emily's family, learning how to cook simple meals, watching Emily's brother practice his soccer moves, and even stumbling over English words as Emily patiently corrected her with a smile. And in return, Hana introduced Emily to the grace of Japanese traditions, teaching her origami, calligraphy, and sharing old folk stories that made Emily's eyes glisten with wonder. But their growing bond soon attracted the attention of Hana's business advisors, men in suits who believed that her spending time with a waitress was reckless, dangerous for her reputation, and potentially damaging for the empire she was expected to lead. So they confronted her, pressured her, and even went as far as to dig into Emily's past, hoping to prove she was unworthy. But when they presented their so-called evidence, a list of debts, family struggles, and financial hardships, Hannah stood taller than ever and declared, through a translator, that Emily's honesty and kindness outweighed any wealth or pedigree, and that if her empire could not respect the humanity of those around her, then perhaps it wasn't an empire worth keeping. This defiance set off a storm. Board members threatened resignation. Tabloids began printing scandalous headlines, and Veronica, a distant cousin who always coveted Hannah's fortune, began plotting to have her declared unfit to run the company. But through it all, Emily never left her side, comforting her during long nights, reminding her to hold on to what mattered, and slowly, Hannah realized that she was no longer the fragile, lonely millionaire who sat voiceless in that restaurant. She was stronger, braver, and freer because she had finally found someone who saw her heart instead of her bank account. And when the climax of our story arrived, with the board attempting to strip her of authority in a dramatic courtroom-like meeting, Hannah shocked everyone by delivering a speech in halting but determined English, declaring that her vision for the future was not about profits or power, but about building bridges, breaking barriers, and creating a company culture where no one would ever feel voiceless the way she once did. And as her words echoed in the room, Emily stood in the crowd, tears in her eyes, knowing she had witnessed not just a friend's transformation, but the birth of a leader. In the resolution of this tale, Hannah kept her empire, but she reshaped its, investing in programs that taught languages, funded cultural exchanges, and supported education for underprivileged families, including Emily's, whose brother eventually graduated on a scholarship sponsored by Hannah's foundation. And while rumors continued, and society never stopped whispering, Hannah no longer cared, because she had learned that true wealth lies not in the size of your bank account, but in the depth of the connections you create. And as the camera fades out on the image of Hannah and Emily sitting together in that same restaurant years later, laughing over tea as if nothing had changed, the narrator's voice joins you, the viewer, with a question that lingers long after the story ends. In a world obsessed with money and appearances, will you be the one who listens, who understands, who speaks the language of the heart?